Hey everyone, it's Dexum, and here is the Omega Trial Guide for Black Bolt. Overall, Black Bolt is one of the better characters that they've released recently. He's an awesome mix of melee and ranged abilities, but one of the coolest things about him is that his melee abilities are movement abilities, which means he's a very mobile character. To pass the trials, I've used a number of different abilities, mostly his melee abilities because they do a lot of damage, but I've also put in some ranged abilities, such as his Quasi-Sonic Bolt, which is a really good ranged builder. And I've also slotted Split the Sky, which is really good with his talent Cosmic Confluence, which is really good actually whenever you're fighting Red Skull, because you can jump in and add a damage over time to those mechs and then run off and it'll still do a decent amount of damage. It's also really good as part of a rotation between Split the Sky and Swooping Strikes, as while you're using Swooping Strikes in Cosmic Confluence, it'll regenerate your charge. For the second talent, I chose Attilan Alacrity, and the reason I did that is because it gives you 2 more charges to Inhuman Speed, and having those extra dashes really comes in handy whenever you're in the trials. My third talent was Razor Wind Wings, and that one's really good for Swooping Strikes. It increases the cooldown by 4, but it also increases the damage bonus by 150%, which really comes in handy for heavy hits. And usually abilities like Swooping Strikes isn't good against a lot of different enemies because it'll hit as many enemies as there are around you. But it's really good in the trials because it also negates damage that you would be taking, and with Swooping Strikes, when you finally get down to just the boss, it'll do a lot of damage to the boss, and hopefully if you have the right gear, a lot of brutal and critical strikes too. For the fourth power that I chose, I decided to go with Master Blow, which Master Blow becomes a signature power that always brutal strikes. But Killing Word is no longer a signature power, but I kept Killing Word on the bar because it's a really good stun, and it's really good as part of a rotation. And having Master Blow as a brutal strike is really an amazing ability and can knock down the bosses pretty quickly, especially if you're geared for heavy brutal strikes with brutal strike damage. Another good thing about Master Blow is it's also an execution ability. So if you have enough charge and you're focusing down the boss, the more health he's missing, the more damage you're going to do, and that's compounded by your brutal strikes. The last talent I chose is Second Wind, and when you're below 30% maximum health, Quasi-Sonic Barrier automatically activates, which is really good because it will regenerate your health and some of your charge. So this actually will come in handy if for some reason you get tapped by Red Skull's fire. If you're standing in that barrier, you may just live through it. As far as gear goes, my gear is all over the place. Once I hit 60, I opened several shield supply boxes, and I put on pretty much any of the gear that I could find, trying to focus on the brutal and critical strike ratings and brutal damage rating if I could possibly get it. I really didn't end up getting it. I'd say that some of the lifesavers here is the Gorgon Medallion, which really came in handy, and my catalyst is an invisibility catalyst, even though it's not a very good invisibility catalyst because I didn't really wait to find one that would work. I just wanted one that had invisibility on it whenever I used my medkit. And due to the nature of Black Bolt, I chose the complete relic of the Immortal, which gives me 300 damage to range and melee powers. Since he's kind of a hybrid spec, I wanted to do that, but you can always go with just a straight melee damage one or a range damage one, depending on what you decide outside of the trials. But if you're going to use my build, this one would probably work best for you. You can tell by the artifacts that I didn't really put very much thought into it. Some of them are level 15 artifacts. I didn't spend a lot of time gearing my character. I always like doing these trials a little under geared so that if you have problems with it, you can spend some time to over gear just to make it a little bit easier. I will say I did equip the Secret Hydra training manual, and that one is fantastic for him. It gives you invisibility and +9 to fighting for 3 seconds when your health drops below 40%. It also has brutal strike rating, which is really good, and an increase to melee damage. There are plenty of other artifacts that would be much better for him, but again, I just threw on some of what I had, and the Omega Trial was pretty easy. Again, for synergies, Black Bolt has a lot of options here. Because he has melee and ranged, he has hand-to-hand and energy, he has fighting and energy as well. You could spend some time trying to find the best build for melee and range and focus your synergies around that. But in all honesty, Black Bolt is strong enough to where if you don't have 10 synergies, you could probably get by without them. And if you do have them, for this build, focusing melee and hand-to-hand with maybe a secondary to ranged and fighting attributes would be ideal. But I think you can do it without it. It really just depends on which characters you have unlocked. And lastly, for the Infinity Points, at least having 50 in your fighting attributes is going to help you a lot. And really the only thing that I would recommend. But there you have it. That is the Omega Trial Guide for Black Bolt. If you guys have any questions or concerns or just want to make a comment about Black Bolt, feel free to leave it in the comments. I appreciate you guys watching. Let me know how your trials go with Black Bolt, and I'll see you in game.